The lightweight and hyperlight electric dirt bike category is by far the most popular. We have the best bikes of 2025 behind me, so we rode all of these bikes and we found out the good, bad, and the ugly, and now we're gonna relay all of that to you right now. We're gonna give full spec comparisons with the numbers that matter: power output, battery capacity, battery range, weight, and price. Then we'll go bike by bike, break down what we loved, what we didn't, and give you the podium of the best bikes this year. And just like last year, we brought in a group of riders with different sizes, skill levels, and backgrounds to help rank the bikes. And the results reflect the full crew. This year's lineup includes the Zero XB, 79 Bike Falcon Pro, eRide Pro SS 3.0, eRide Pro SR, Altis Sigma, Talaria Sting MX5, Ventus One Plus, Arctic Leopard XE Pro S, and the EWatt 2.0. This is a mix of budget bikes, mid-tier bikes, and high-power bikes that we're now calling the hyperlight category, and some brand new entries that we've never tested before. Some were huge surprises, others not so much. Let's get into it. Let's start with peak power. 3 bikes really stood out. The EWatt 2.0 was a monster with 30 kilowatts of peak power, followed by the Ventus One Plus at 28 kilowatts, and the eRide Pro SR at 25 kilowatts. After that, you've got the Altis Sigma with 22, Arctic Leopard XE Pro S with 20, and the eRide SS 3.0 just behind at 15.8 kilowatts. At the bottom, Talaria MX5 with 13.4, Falcon Pro at 10, and the Zero XB with 7.5. Which sounds low, but weight and gearing change how that feels on the trail, so don't count it out just yet. In terms of battery, Arctic Leopard takes the win here with 72 volts, 55 amp hours, which totals nearly 4 kilowatt hours. No other bike even gets close. The EWatt sneaks in next with an 81 volt, 45 amp hour setup, totaling 3.65 kilowatt hours. Ventus, eRide 3.0, and SR are all tied with 72 volt, 50 amp hour packs, right around 3.6 kilowatt hours. Then you've got the Altis Sigma at 3.4, Talaria at 2.88, Falcon at 2.5, and Zero XB at 2.4 kilowatt hours. Let's talk about battery range. All of the bikes were ridden on the same track, switching riders consistently until they died, and here's how far each one went. Arctic Leopard took the win with 35 miles. Then it was the Ventus One Plus at 29.5 miles. eRide Pro SR and SS 3.0 gave up right at the same time, 28.5 miles. EWatt 2.0 at 27 miles, Altis Sigma 22.7 miles, Talaria MX5 21.5 miles, Falcon Pro 20 miles, Zero XB 19 miles. From lightest to heaviest, the Falcon Pro came in at just 130 pounds. Zero XB was next at 139, Ventus at 152, EWatt 154, then the Arctic Leopard at 159. Talaria tipped in at 165, eRide SS 3.0 167, SR 183, and the Altis Sigma is the heaviest at 185 pounds. That means the most powerful bike, the EWatt, is also one of the lightest, which might explain a few things later. Last up, price. These are the current base MSRPs of these bikes. The Falcon Pro is most affordable at $3,999. Then the Zero XB, $4,195. Talaria is next, just under $5,000. Arctic Leopard, $5,399. eRide SS 3.0, $5,599. Altis Sigma, $5,899, eRide SR, $6,299, Ventus, $63.99, and EWatt, $64.99. So now that we have the numbers, let's go bike by bike and talk about how they actually ride. The Zero XB surprised us in a good way. It's light, it's simple, and it feels a lot like a Surron Light Bee. Out of all of the bikes we tested, this one felt like it was geared the most toward a true entry-level option. But that's not a bad thing. It's actually really fun to ride, especially on tighter tracks or pit bike style layouts. The power's mellow, but it matches the chassis really well. And that's part of what makes it so fun. You can actually ride it hard without feeling like the bike's going to twist underneath you. Some of the other bikes in this test have so much power that they can be a bit of a handful to get traction, and they feel overpowered for the chassis. But not with the Zero. It's lively, nimble, and easy to ride.
This thing just feels a little bit more of that original DNA of these bikes.
It's got a slightly larger rear sprocket, which helps with low-end acceleration. The throttle response is smooth, the chassis feels well balanced, and it's just a solid platform for smaller or newer riders. We think it does need better brake pads, maybe some more aggressive tires and grips, but for the price, it's really hard to complain at all. The core package is really dialed for entry-level riders, and it'll be another bike that's easily upgradable, just like the Surron Light Bee. So if you're new to these bikes, have a smaller or beginner rider, or just want a solid, affordable bike, the Zero XB hits that mark. The 79 Bike Falcon Pro kind of feels similar to the Zero and the Surron Light Bee due to its lightweight and compact chassis. It's got a tad bit more power than the Zero, but being the most affordable of the test, it's very budget-minded. The Fast Ace fork is solid, and a lot of the parts like the hubs and brakes are older style, but easy to upgrade because it's the golden standard that we've seen for years, and the whole bike just has a familiar feel to it.
It's like a really cross-compatible platform where there's a lot of parts available for this bike.
It's another nimble, lower weight bike, which makes it really versatile for a wide range of riders. One thing we didn't love was the throttle feel and power delivery. That was one of our main complaints. You'd twist the throttle and feel like there was just a slight disconnect between throttle feel and the rear wheel.
It seemed like it had a delay at the bottom. There was like a hiccup or just slight delay.
Some of this can be tuned, and it may be an easy fix for 79 bike, but all of our riders noticed it, so we have to mention it. As with every 79 bike and Ventus chassis that we've ridden, there was noticeable play in the linkage. We've ridden a few bikes on this chassis, and that's been consistent across all of them. If you're riding this bike off-road, we recommend keeping an eye on spoke tension. On several occasions, we had to retighten the spokes, specifically on the rear wheel. The brakes seem to be a similar version to the Lewis LH4, which is a brake that we love. It's got a great brake feel once they're engaged. However, we wish the levers were adjustable, because it felt like there was a fair amount of dead space before the brakes engaged. A brake bleed may help this, but if the levers were adjustable, it would definitely solve the problem.
When I'm squeezing them, it felt like they weren't working, and then all of a sudden they catch and start working.
That said, it's super light, nimble, easy to upgrade, and parts are widely available. Think of this one as a great base for someone who just wants to tinker and customize. We really like the bike, but just expect to do a few adjustments out of the box. It's also worth noting that 79 Bike has a new model on the horizon called the GT, and we'll review that when it's time. So if the Pro power isn't enough, but the Ventus is too expensive, for another $1,000 over the Pro, you can get the same great chassis as the bikes I just mentioned, but with a bump in power, with similar output to the bike that I'm about to mention next. SS 3.0 was a clear favorite for a lot of riders. Not because it was the fastest, but because it just felt right. Power feels snappy, the chassis feels tight, and the bike just rides well. The power is the right amount, and you can push it hard without feeling like it's too much. It's got more power than last year's SS 2.0, but it's not overkill like the SR can sometimes feel. When we say the power feels right, it just means that the power matches the chassis. The weight feels good, and the whole package is responsive and fun without being overwhelming.
As soon as I got on it, I was like, this is comfortable.
The tires are dual sport style, but surprisingly, they hooked up pretty well in all conditions. The suspension felt balanced, the throttle delivery was predictable, and everyone liked the weight and how it moved underneath you. Compared to last year's SS 2.0, this one is a clear upgrade. It's predictable, well-tuned, and just easy to trust.
It's a huge improvement on the 2.0. You got better brakes, better suspension, more power, more battery.
If you want something that feels like it has the bigger power and bigger battery, but it's still light and playful, this one's kind of hard to beat. As with a lot of these bikes, we did get some battery rattle with the 3.0. So we added a battery rattle stopper and put an end to that immediately. Another thing you can do is swap the spacer from below the triple clamp to above, and that will give you a little bit more height in the front. Not a lot of complaints here, just a really good all-around bike. And it is worth mentioning that the SS 2.0 is still an option. We didn't include it in the test this year, but you can refer back to it in our 2024 test. So if you want to save even more money and have a few less features, we think the SS 2.0 is still a great bike. If the SS 3.0 is the balanced option, the SR is the wild one. It's got a ton of power, arguably maybe too much for this chassis. Under hard acceleration, you can start to feel flex in the swing arm and some unsettled behavior when pushing it hard. It can be tough to find traction when you're running in high power modes, but if you've got the skills to use all the power, this bike can absolutely rip, but it definitely rewards finesse.
Yeah, for some reason this one took me an extra second to adapt to. Definitely had to ride it different.
It has the same battery size and frame as the SS 3.0, but with its reinforcement and slightly different parts, it's noticeably heavier. So those that like the E-Ride chassis but want something that's more nimble might want to look toward the SS models instead. One huge point is that this bike is very tunable through the controller app, which is great if you like to tinker and fine-tune the power modes. To get the most out of this bike, we think it could really benefit from an aftermarket controller like the EBMX X9000 to really hone in the abundance of power on this bike. Many of us preferred the SS 3.0 because it was easier to ride consistently and it felt more composed and simple. But the SR still scored well with more aggressive riders. We've been testing the new Cirrus fork prototype on this bike, so we rode it a ton when it was stock and now a ton with the Cirrus fork and an EXT shock. But you'll see more on that mod later. We just want you to know that the footage you're seeing is not indicative of the suspension that comes stock on this bike. The stock suspension is the exact same as the SS 3.0. This one left us a little confused. It's got great looks and great branding, but our test riders didn't think that it held its own against the others. We'll start by saying this is the standard version. The MX has a different sprocket, suspension tune, and wheels, but we understood that while riding it and we evaluated it accordingly. The throttle is super smooth, which is definitely its best attribute. Power delivery is refined and predictable, and it's got a gearbox, which we really appreciate.
The power comes on really smooth at the bottom, gradually increases, gets pretty powerful up top.
It doesn't feel like it wants to wheelie or snap out of a corner, but it has a more smooth and refined feel. Again, this feeling can be woken up with a larger sprocket. We really like the fact that it has a large, comfortable seat. And again, the styling is really great on this bike. It looks like a mini dirt bike. You do notice that it's the heaviest of the bunch, but that's not all bad depending on where you ride. Weight can make the bike feel more stable, but it does take away from some of the nimble feeling. The chassis feels heavy, wide, and low to the ground. We were clipping foot pegs on rocks, and even with high PSI in the fork, the suspension had a lot of dive to it, and we also felt some clunking in the linkage area, which wasn't the chain guide that everyone refers to. It's got a huge battery, good brakes, and nice top-end power, but the overall ride feel just didn't work for us off-road. The balance of the bike kind of reminds us of a street bike wearing dirt bike plastics.
Now that I'm in some of this tighter turn stuff, like that weight is more pronounced.
One thing we didn't love was that we needed to carry a key around just to open the seat compartment to get to the battery, which was necessary just to turn the bike on and off. It got packed with mud and dirt easily and made an extra unnecessary step. We'd prefer to just use a key up top to make life easier. We think this bike is geared best for light off-road use or more dual sport focused rides, but in our group, it scored low in technical terrain. It just didn't feel comfortable keeping up with the pack. If you're a mellow trail rider or planning for street use, this bike will reward you. But when we pushed it harder off-road, it fell short compared to the others. If we were to mod it, this bike would really benefit from some wider and taller bars, then hit the street or mellow 2-track dirt roads and enjoy it. This is one of the bigger bikes of the test. Larger seat, roomier cockpit, and one of the most stable feeling of the bunch. It's got a 72 volt system now, which is great, but it still feels a little slow compared to the others. Of course, we clipped the brown loop wire, but it still felt down on power compared to some of the other bikes. We think a gearing or controller change would really wake it up. That said, it was one of the quietest and most solid feeling bikes of the test. This bike is another one that really benefits from a battery rattle stopper, and after that there are almost no rattles. And the gearbox, instead of a belt drive, is a big win for durability. With a little bit more front end height via a drop clamp or a 21-inch front wheel, different bars and a different tune, this thing could be a real contender.
Like if you put better bars and a better fork on that, I think that bike would actually feel really good.
The MX5 has a really well-made chain guide, especially in comparison to other bikes in this category. We experienced a fair amount of chain derailments on the previous MX4 version, so it's nice to see that attention put into the MX5. Talaria did a lot to upgrade the rest of the bike over the previous MX4 model, with beefier hubs, brakes, chain, and sprocket. This bike got a ton of attention when it was released, but we feel like it's been a bit overshadowed by some of the other bikes that recently came after it. We can't hide the fact that it didn't have the best battery range, but overall, with a few mods, this MX5 could be a real winner for those looking for a larger feeling, small size bike from a manufacturer with a really good reputation. This thing is a rocket ship.
Are you joking?
The Ventus One Plus has some of the most power than anything else that we've ridden in this weight class, and it delivers that power fast. It's super light, super aggressive, and super tunable, but it also takes some setup to get right. The display setup is complicated. A lot of riders felt like it was too many buttons and too many modes, and a couple of us changed settings by accident while riding. This bike is truly a tuner's paradise, but for those who want to point and shoot, might look for simplicity like that of an eRide 3.0 or Zero XB. One design feature we really didn't like is the push button start. It kept getting stuck on us because it would get packed full of dirt and it was hard to actuate, and you still need to carry a key around to get into the battery compartment. So again, we'd rather just have a key and keep it simple. The Ventus uses the same exact chassis as the 79 bike, so it's familiar and fairly common in terms of upgrades. Despite the crazy powertrain on this bike, it's still really nimble and light feeling, which probably gives the bike the best power to weight ratio of the test.
This thing is just kind of got it all.
On the topic of chassis, the Ventus suffers from the same movement in the rear linkage as the 79 bike. We're sure there will be a solution moving forward, but the linkage has a small amount of play, and we all noticed it when riding. It comes stock feeling quite low in the front. which is okay for street riding, but for dirt riders, we had to make some changes. We swapped the front tire for a Dunlop MX34, a drop crown, and new bars to get the front end where we wanted it. Once that was done, the bike felt noticeably better. The Reflosa suspension is easily some of the best in this category, and it's cool to see it come stock on this bike. The Ventus was another easy favorite of the test, so if you want raw speed and you're willing to dial it in, the Ventus is hard to beat.
This may be small bike of the year right here.
The Arctic Leopard XE Pro S kind of turned out to be the dark horse of this test. A little taller, a little longer, and a lot more stable than expected. The Arctic Leopards we've tested in the past have always had great power and great battery range, but often lacked in the chassis and suspension department. Not the XE Pro though.
I've been historically not the biggest fan of Arctic Leopard bikes, but this one feels like it's gonna be a good one.
It feels like Arctic Leopard has really leveled up with the chassis on this bike. It's got a huge battery, solid power delivery, and a very planted feel in rough terrain. The direct drive system is quiet and responsive, and they fixed the battery rattle that used to plague earlier models.
Dude, this thing's sick. It has all the CB185 chassis noise too.
I know.
Clack, 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 clack.
We swapped bars and tires like usual, and once that was done, this bike handled great. The swing arm length from axle to pivot is at least 1 inch longer than most of the competition, and we felt that extra length when riding the bike. It gives up some of that snappy, lively feel in the rear, and it's a bit harder to loft the front wheel as a result, but on the flip side, you gain a fair amount of stability from it. It's got stiffer suspension than other models we've tested, which for a stock bike was a noticeable difference. The bike seems to ride a bit higher in the stroke and doesn't blow through travel as easily as some of the other bikes. The side plastics scuffed up quickly, and the ergonomics that result from the plastics are a little wide at the knees. Another thing we noticed is our boots got hung up on the plastics frequently, but otherwise, this is a really solid off-road machine, and it scored super high with trail and enduro style riders. This is the lunatic of the group, straight up. The EWatt makes 30 kilowatts. That's over 40 horsepower in a 150 pound chassis. And yeah, it's fun, until it kind of isn't.
I can just hardly stay in the throttle. This thing is so fast. Oh my God.
It's got the most power by a mile, and it feels like it. Power is absurd. It'll wheelie in any mode, and even in mode 1, it feels like it's trying to buck you off. That being said, the power is completely tunable through the EBMX app, so you can definitely mellow this bike out, but that's probably not why you'd want this bike. It really does have one of, if not the best drivetrain out of all of these bikes. We just feel like the drivetrain outshines every other element of the bike. The suspension, chassis, wheels, and brakes really feels like it wasn't ready for this much power. We upgraded the fork to the Reflosa 228mm and a Dunlop MX34 front tire, which helped, but it still feels like too much power for the frame to keep up with. We jokingly nicknamed it the Nutcracker because of this big plastic battery lid that sits uncomfortably high in between your legs. Let's just say, don't slide forward. If you know what we mean, you know what we mean.
What do you think of the Captain Insano?
The Nut Muncher?
The Nut Muncher.
This bike comes stock with a chain drive conversion, which does add noise, but it's probably a wise decision given how much power this bike is putting out. If you want bragging rights and love a bit of chaos, this is your bike. You'll win every drag race. But if you're trying to hit a technical trail or jump the bike, we found it to be a little scary off-road. Surron USA did not participate in this year's shootout, but we've had extensive seat time on that bike before it received some minor upgrades, and we've got nothing but good things to say about it. Surron has a great dealer network and a solid, reliable bike. It's not the fastest or packed with the most features, but it is reliable and great for entry-level riders. So we'd imagine it would slide right into the 0XB category, and we'd probably echo a similar sentiment about that bike. So what is the verdict? We're not going to name a single winner this year because it really depends on what you are specifically looking for. This category has evolved to have a much bigger range of bikes. But if we had to pick a podium, it would be the eRide Pro SS 3.0, the Ventus One Plus, and the Arctic Leopard XE Pro S. eRide Pro SS 3.0. We think this is the best all-around bike for most riders. It's got the right amount of power, it's simple, and it's easy to use. It's fun and nimble without being too heavy. It can jump and ride trails, and it can also hit the street with ease. And for the price, it truly does feel like the best all-around bike. Ventus One Plus. This is the fastest and most tunable bike with a chassis that seems more composed than others. The Ventus also feels a bit more like a do-all type bike, but it does take some front-end modification if you're going to ride it off-road. The bike has tons of potential, and the modes make it a bike that a beginner can learn on and a pro can race on. Arctic Leopard XE Pro S. The XE Pro S stands out for having the best battery range, a super stable chassis, and nice sizing for adults. When you factor in its competitive pricing, we think it's a really good choice for a lot of riders who want to stay in the lightweight size but don't want to feel like a bear on a tricycle. The rest, well, each has its place depending on your budget, size, and riding style. For instance, we'd point beginners toward the Zero XB and bigger riders toward the Talaria Sting MX5 Pro. And if you're wondering why you haven't heard anything about the Surron Ultra Bee or the Stark Varg or any of the other bikes that weren't mentioned, that's because they just don't really fit in this category. This is what we formerly called the lightweight category, and we're now calling it the hyperlight category, because a lot of these bikes have gotten super fast, but they're still under 200 pounds and under a seat height of 35 inches. So if you want to know more about those bikes, well, we'll have content on about those too. So let us know what you think. Thanks for watching, and check out the full write-ups and mods at electriccyclerider.com. See ya!